Hello and welcome. This is Matthias 76. Together, we are decoding the deception. Together today, we're back in the book of Hebrews. We're going to be talking about Jesus, our great high priest. So today we're talking about something that does not, for us, have a whole lot of currency, and that is the high priesthood. It's a very important concept. It's a very important part of the reality of the people of the Old Testament. Next to the king, maybe side by side with the king, the high priest was the most important person. It is quite likely that if Moses hadn't balked and said, "Oh Lord, please send somebody else other than me to Pharaoh," and kept insisting, that Moses would have carried both roles of the leadership mantle, which later became king, and high priest. So it's a big deal. The high priest is a big deal. And I want to talk a little bit. I've got an image here that will pop up on the screen. This is a graphic representation of the high priest, and he's got on all his priestly stuff, the ephod, etc. It was laid out in multiple chapters in I can't remember now where it was. I should have looked to be sure. In the Old Testament, Leviticus, exactly what the priest was supposed to wear. It's part of what was made by all those skilled craftsmen when they made the tabernacle. Behind him is the temple. This is the altar. Over here, you've got the sea, the big thing of water, brass bathtub over here. But the high priest, there were many priests. There was only one high priest, and he was chosen. You didn't run for it. Things probably got corrupt later on. It probably did work that way, but it's not the way it was supposed to be. You were chosen to be the high priest, to serve before God on a daily basis, twice a day. The priest would go into the holy place. That's what these doors here behind the priest lead into. They lead into the holy place. There they burned incense. Okay, that's where Zechariah was when Gabriel appeared to him to tell him that he and Elizabeth were going to have a son that would be John the Baptist. Behind that was the Holy of Holies. And the Holy of Holies, there was a veil, great big tall veil, big thick curtain that hung between the holy place and the Holy of Holies. Only the high priest went into the Holy of Holies, and that only once a year on the Day of Atonement. There was the Ark of the Covenant and the mercy seat. Above the Ark of the Covenant, it was the throne room on earth, the throne room of God. It was the earthly representation of the heavenly reality. Okay? So for us, we have to remind ourselves who the high priest was, what he was about. There were, genetic lineage that you had to be a part of in order to be a high priest. These things are not part of our everyday culture, and they definitely were for the people to whom the letter to the Hebrews was written. So having an understanding of this, vitally important, and we'll continue to talk about it more as we work our way through. So we will read these verses that end chapter 4. Since then, we have a great high priest who has passed through the heavens, Jesus, the Son of God. Let us hold fast our confession, for we do not have a high priest who is unable to sympathize with our weaknesses, but one who in every respect has been tempted as we are, yet without sin. Let us then with confidence draw near to the throne of grace that we may receive mercy and find grace to help in time of need. These verses, we could just talk about these verses, and really all of chapter 5 kind of expands on what is said here. Kind of interesting how it is set up. Again, it's one of those places where the chapter break is a little bit hinky. The author continues to build as he works his way through this letter. You know, Jesus is superior to angels. Jesus is superior to Moses and the law. And you could also, because of what it says in the first couple verses, Jesus is superior to the prophets, because it talked about how God spoke to us in times gone by, and now he's spoken to us through his son. This section on the high priest is where the author spends the most time, and there is this recurring theme of not falling away, not losing your faith in Christ, because these things that are steeped in tradition, they're part of the culture, part of the fabric of their reality and their society and everything that they held dear. It was very easy for them to be drawn back into that stuff. For the ceremony, and I'm not saying the ceremony was superfluous, it certainly wasn't. The ceremony, that now that Jesus had come, guess what? It was superfluous, because everything pointed to Jesus. Everything pointed to Jesus. The Old Testament, all of it, 39 books, it all pointed ahead to Jesus. And so also, guess what points to Jesus? The high priesthood points to Jesus. That role of the high priest, just as the role of the king in Israel and the prophets in Israel, those roles all pointed ahead to Jesus. Jesus is a great high priest. Now, the word superior, better, it's not used here, but the idea is definitely here. He is a great high priest. He is the great high priest who has passed through the heavens, Jesus, the Son of God. And then this, the way the verse ends, let us hold fast our confession. Hold fast. That word appears about 6 times in the book of Hebrews. Here, we're going to do this. There, hold fast. You see, it's in chapter 3, verse 6, here in 4:14, chapter 6, verse 18. It's all about losing your faith and not losing your faith. And Hebrews 10:23. So what is that? 1, 2, 3, 4 times we are implored, the recipients of this letter are implored to hold fast. And hold fast means you grab on and you don't let go. And hold fast to what? Our confession, that confession that we proclaim Jesus Christ as Lord. Everything wants to pull us away from that. Everything Satan sends our way, everything the world sends our way, wants to separate us from that all-important truth that Jesus Christ is our Savior. He's the only way to heaven. But he passed through the heavens. He passed through the heavens. Back to that picture of the high priest. When where'd it go? You're going to do that to me, huh? When the high priest carried out his important role on the Day of Atonement, he had to go into the holy place, and then he passed through that curtain of veil, right? That picture is what the author is calling on with Jesus passing through the heavens, because he didn't just go into the earthly representation of the presence of God. He went into the real thing up in heaven. And don't forget, when Jesus died, what happened? That veil in the temple was torn in two from top to bottom, 40 feet tall, 6 inches thick, various layers of fabric. It was torn in half from top to bottom. Why? Because now we have access. Now we can boldly approach the throne of grace to find mercy and grace in time of need. Gee, I think that's right here in Hebrews 4:16. So Jesus passed through the heavens, not through a veil in a building built by Solomon and then redone by Herod. He passed through the heavens, Jesus, the Son of God, and therefore, that's the one we believe in. That's the one we confess. Why would we let go of that for anything that these ceremonies and pomp and circumstances of this world only served to point us toward? It's all about Jesus. For we do not have a high priest who is unable to sympathize with our weakness, but one who has been, we'll start over. For we do not have a high priest who is unable to sympathize with our weaknesses, but one who in every respect has been tempted as we are, yet without sin. Jesus, becoming man, becoming human, it accomplished a lot of things. We talked about that before with what it means for us and for our salvation. But it also did this. He became one of us. He understands us. He has experiential knowledge of what it is like to have the weakness of the flesh. So, we do not have a high priest who is unable to sympathize with our weaknesses. Later, he's going to talk about how the high priest can understand because he's one of us, the earthly high priest, right? But one who in every respect, has been tempted as we are, yet without sin. This is always a struggle for us. It's come up before and here in Hebrews, but we're going to talk about it again. Jesus was tempted. He was tempted as we are. Our struggle in understanding this is that he didn't sin. How can you be tempted and not sin? Because when I'm tempted, my heart goes there. My mind goes there. We have a hard time understanding this. But because I struggle, because of my limited abilities, because of the frailty of my mind and its limitations, I don't want to diminish what it was that Christ did. He was tempted and he overcame. My problem is I don't overcome, but he did. He was without sin. We can just look at some verses that talk about that. John 8:46. To his enemies, in the heat of a debate with them, which one of you convicts me of sin? He was without sin. 2 Corinthians 5:21. For our sake, he made him to be sin who knew no sin, so that in him we might become the righteousness of God. He knew no sin. He was made to be sin. He was made to be sin so that he could pay the price for our falling to temptation, for our first parents falling into temptation, and us continuing on that path each and every day. He knew no sin, but God made him to be sin. He put our sin upon him, and he suffered its punishment. 1 Peter 2:22, he committed no sin, neither was deceit found in his mouth. And 1 John 3:5, you know that he appeared in order to take away sins, and in him there is no sin. But the one that we fly to, the one we go to for mercy, he understands us. He understands our weakness. And yeah, are there aspects of that are beyond our ability to understand? Absolutely. But I want a God who's beyond my ability to understand. And I won't listen to arguments made that, oh, he's not really the kind of God who cares and all of that because it wasn't a struggle for him. All the lies that Satan would tell us. Just because I can't understand it doesn't mean it's not true. If I use that, I have to be able to understand it in order for it to be true. Then I eliminate much of what is true. I live in denial of what is true because my brain cannot comprehend it. Eternity doesn't cease to exist because my mind cannot comprehend it. We go on. Let us then, with confidence, draw near to the throne of grace that we may receive mercy and find grace to help in time of need. This is another theme. Look at all these references. I'm not going to jump to them, but 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, in similar places as the other reference we just looked at. Confidence. It's a theme of the book of Revelation. Why do I have confidence? Why do you have confidence? Why was the author encouraging these believers to have confidence? I don't have confidence because of me. I am a veritable gold mine of adamant shortcomings. I look at my life, and there are many things about my failings and shortcomings that make me cringe. But my confidence isn't in me. My confidence is in him who has passed through the heavens, gone into the Holy of Holies, and there, as the high priest took blood in to make atonement for the sins of the people, Jesus, and it's going to get into this later because he keeps talking about Jesus as the high priest, but he went in there with his own blood, by the precious blood of a lamb without spot and without blemish, the blood of infinite worth, because it is the blood of God himself, and he made atonement for me. He loves me so much that he came down here and lived my struggle and overcame, and he didn't do it for him. He didn't need to. He did it for me. Knowing all of that, understanding all of that, having that is the foundation for my faith. How can I not have confidence? Let us then, with confidence, draw near to the throne of grace. A throne of grace. We think of thrones, we think of power, we think of might, we think of all of those things. We think of those who are high and above and removed from us. They're detached from our problems and our struggles because they live in comfort and luxury, and what they say happens. But that's not the kind of throne that's described here. That's not the way it's modified. The word throne carries with it all those things: power, might, dominion, lordship, however you want to picture that. That's part of the throne where Jesus sits on the right hand of God the Father Almighty. But because it's Jesus sitting in that throne, it is a throne of grace. Apply this to your life when you approach Jesus in prayer, when you go to him, because that's what that torn veil means. It was cut in half because now we have access to go in ourselves and to approach that throne because Jesus passed through. He made the way and we just follow him. But when we approach his throne of power and might, it's for us a throne of grace. He has won. He is victorious, and he did it for us. Do you think he doesn't want to hear from you? Do you think he doesn't care? Do you think that he feels beyond you and detached from your struggle? No. Everything he's done is about you. It is for you. That's why we have confidence to draw near. You don't have to stand far away. Draw near. You don't have to enter the room and kneel down before him and say, "Long live the king," right? We're his children. We run up to him, to his throne of grace, that we may receive. Through him, we receive mercy and we find grace. Wonderful, wonderful things. Both of them speak of that which is good, that which is a blessing, that very thing that we need, that we don't deserve, but he gives it to us anyway. Mercy in Hebrew, that's that word chesed that I like so much, undeserved kindness. No one has to show mercy to you. The powerful don't have to show mercy to the weak. They don't have to. He wants to. He wants to. Everything he's done, the history of the universe, what he did from the beginning, planning our salvation and working it out, predestining us, choosing us, sending his son to redeem us, all of that bespeaks his mercy and that he's more than ready to shower grace, good things, spiritual especially, but spiritual and material, good things that we need when? To help in time of need. And that is an okay translation. It's better in the time of need, when you really need it, just when you need it. That's when when's he going to help? When you need it. And in his grace and his omniscience and all those amazing, awesome things that he is, because he is God Most High, he knows when to shower the blessings. He knows. And so if I'm approaching him for mercy and grace, and I'm doing so with confidence because everything I know about him, then I can trust that he knows the right time for those things. And notice it doesn't say that we go in there and make demands. It doesn't say that. That we're approaching the throne of grace, that we may receive mercy and find grace just at the right time, just in the nick of time, at the right time. Such a beautiful, beautiful picture. Popping in here with a request. Go down below, smash that like button. It makes a difference. Now, verse 5, chapter 5, he's going to talk about the high priest and the best way to teach is to take what people know and apply it to the truth you're trying to convey. If you're trying to teach a young child about consequences, you might use the picture of building blocks and what happens if you don't build the foundation the right way, or if you pull out a block, this is going to happen. And once it starts, it can't be stopped. It's a picture that they can understand. And that is what the author, Jesus did it constantly with a seed, a field, a vineyard, a lost coin, all of those different things. But the author here is doing that, just talking about what they knew about the high priesthood and applying it to Jesus. For every high priest chosen from among men is appointed to act on behalf of men in relation to God, to offer gifts and sacrifices for sins. That's how they're picked. That's what they do. He can deal gently with the ignorant and wayward, since he himself is beset with weakness. He's a man, just like the people he serves. And ultimately, I should have said this before. Ultimately, if you want a simple definition for what a priest is, you know what a priest is? It's not about the clothes. It's not about the fact that these 12 stones on this breastplate that he wore represented the 12 tribes of Israel. All that's neat. It's cool. A priest is a go-between. He's a go-between. He goes between man and God, between God and man. Now, doesn't that sound like Jesus? He is the go-between. That's what a priest is. He is a go-between. And isn't it good? Isn't it good if you've got someone going between you and the one in power, you and the one in control, that person understands who you are, what the struggles are that you have, all of those things. You know, there are times when, trying to think of a good example, many of us struggle with weight, right? Eating healthy, all that kind of thing. When I was young, I worked on a farm for this really great guy, and this guy ate enough food in one day, and I'm not kidding you, to feed 3 adult males. I was a 16, 17-year-old, big, strong, young guy on the farm, working out for sports and all that stuff. He could eat literally twice as much food in a sitting as I could. And he didn't have a single ounce of fat on him. It didn't matter. His metabolism just consumed it all. Talking to someone like that, are they able to understand that you have to really watch what you eat and that it's frustrating? No. He ate 3 lunches every day. He didn't have a clue. It's like talking about feeling ugly to somebody who's gorgeous and amazing. And they always look gorgeous and amazing. They roll out of bed in the morning and they look handsome or gorgeous, whatever. It doesn't matter. They're not able to sympathize with you. They've got a different reality, right? We want someone who can understand us. It's a struggle. It's hard because the high priest was a man. He could understand. It was his job to understand the weakness of the people whom he served because he himself was weak. He can deal gently with the ignorant and wayward since he himself is beset with weakness. I love beset. I feel beset with various weaknesses, right? It's just love that turn of phrase. Because of this, he is obligated to offer sacrifice for his own sins, just as he does for the people. Before he was able to go into the Holy of Holies and offer sacrifice for the people, he first had to offer sacrifice for himself. And I'm not going back to the references and showing you all that stuff. That's what he had to do because he had to have his sins atoned for because he could, before he could go and serve as the one who made atonement on the people's behalf. He was one of them. And no one takes this honor for himself, but only when called by God, just as Aaron was. Aaron didn't want to be the priest. Aaron was going out to visit his brother. That's what he was doing. He was out looking for Moses. Moses happened to be talking to God at the burning bush. And God finally got frustrated with Moses and said, okay, your brother Aaron will go and he'll speak for you. And then Aaron was made to be the high priest later on after the Exodus. You don't volunteer to be the high priest. You were chosen to be the high priest, called by God. So also, Christ did not exalt himself to be made a high priest. He's going to work through this argument that Jesus is the ultimate high priest, above and beyond the Aaronic, that's what it's called, the Aaronic priesthood, those high priests. So also, Christ did not exalt himself to be made high priest. Don't just read past that or listen to me read past it and not stop and think about it. So also, Christ did not exalt himself to be made high priest, but was appointed by him who said to him, "You are my son. Today I have begotten you." That begotten concept again, that idea of something entirely new being done. As he says also in another place, here makes me chuckle every time. This guy knew the Old Testament backward and forward, but he'll just say it this way. As he also says in another place, you are a priest forever after the order of Melchizedek. I just had a thought. I had a professor. I had many amazing professors, blessed that way. But I had a professor my Greek professor, Greek and Latin, and he would remember where things were. And he could tell you exactly where on the page a reference was in any part of the Bible and in various reference works. And he always demurred about it. He would say, I think it's somewhere, if you go and you look in Habakkuk, I don't know, maybe chapter 2, verse whatever. And somewhere around there, he would say. And it would be exactly where he said every single time. And for years, students had been checking when he would give a reference, and he was spot on every single time. But he didn't make a big deal about it, like, I know exactly where that obscure reference is. It's here. I wonder if he got that from the author of the letter to the Hebrews, as he also says in another place. Just crossed my mind. And that is an important theme all of its own. You know what it is? The most impressive people I've ever been around are humble. Their humility is impressive. And he wasn't putting on a cloak of humility. The guy really was humble, as many great Christian leaders are. Maybe it was just about being humble. As he also says, and that's what the author here is doing, as he also says in another place, you are a priest forever after the order of Melchizedek. So the "you are my son, today I have begotten you" is from Psalm 2, and it's quoted in the first chapter. We've been over it already. And this, "you are a priest forever after the order of Melchizedek," this is Psalm 110, verse 4, and it's going to come up again and again and again in the letter to the Hebrews. And you can go look up about Melchizedek. He was the king of Salem, king of peace, the high priest who Moses met when he came back from rescuing Lot, when he had been abducted in the battle of the 4 kings versus the 5. That's where Melchizedek comes from. And just so you know, Melch is short for Melech, which is king, and Zedek is righteousness, king of righteousness. And he'll go into all of that later on. But Jesus didn't appoint himself as high priest. God sent him. God appointed him. He said, "Today I have begotten you. You are a priest forever according to the order of Melchizedek." And you can ask, just a good time to remind everyone, why weren't those two references put together in the same psalm? Why weren't all the things about Jesus? Why isn't there a Messiah book in the Old Testament? Why right in the middle, maybe right before Isaiah? We'll call it the Messiah book, the book of the Messiah. Why wasn't there? Where everything that the Messiah was going to be is told to us. Why not? That'd be handy. I wouldn't have to jump around and remember all these different references all over the place in the Old Testament. God scattered breadcrumbs, if you will, bits and pieces of the picture, the mosaic of who the Messiah was going to be all over the Old Testament. Why? Because his enemy was watching. Satan was watching, and he hid things from him. Interesting concept. It's like if you have a message and it's all written out on this sheet of paper and you tear it up and hide the pieces in different places where everybody can find them. That's what was going on. That's why there's so many different places that talk about the Messiah, and it's not all just in one place. Back to Jesus. In the days of his flesh, while he was here in this life, and don't make the mistake of thinking he doesn't still have flesh. He does. He does. He became man and he remains man. He's glorified. He is glorified in heaven, just as we will be glorified in heaven. We shall receive a glorified body like as unto Christ's glorified body. Philippians 3:20. In the days of his flesh, in this life, Jesus offered up prayers and supplications with loud cries and tears to him who was able to save him from death. When I read that, where do you picture Jesus? I picture him in the Garden of Gethsemane on that night in which he was betrayed. They're praying, let this cup pass from me, but not my will, but thine be done. That's prayers and supplications. Supplications is really abasing yourself before the one to whom you are making the request with loud cries and tears. And God could have let him take the easy way out. You wouldn't be saved, and I wouldn't be saved, but he could have. And from a personal standpoint, he wouldn't have lost anything except those whom he loved. And he was heard because of his reverence. Christ was faithful. When you see reverence, that's a word we don't use a lot. He was faithful. He was faithful. He revered his Father, and he was faithful. Although he was a son, he was God's son. He learned obedience through what he suffered. Mind bender. He learned obedience through what he suffered. And there's this struggle with this. Our limitations cloud our understanding. What does it mean that he learned obedience? How could Jesus learn anything? Well, according to his human nature, he was a man. There were things he had to learn. And how did he learn? Guess what? He learned the same way that you learn and I learn. There's a taught to me by that same Professor Freilich. There's a Latin proverb, quae nocent, docent. Those things which hurt, quae nocent, docent. Teach. Those things that hurt, teach. It is through suffering and hardship that we learn. Jesus learned obedience. He hadn't had to be obedient as a man, and it is a struggle. It is painful. It is hard, but what a comfort it is for us as we learn through suffering, through hardship, through obedience. And that word obedience means literally hearing under, to hear under. I put myself under the one who is giving the direction. Jesus put himself under the Father in order that the Father might be glorified and we might be saved. And Jesus warned us, told us, taught us many times, if they do this while the grass is green, while the tree is green, what will they do when it is brown after he's gone? In this world, you will have struggles and troubles, but take heart. I have overcome the world. Big shocker. Are you ready? Grab onto something. Life's hard. Life's hard. My sin makes life hard. My sin makes life hard. And because my sin and your sin makes life hard, Jesus came and lived an exceedingly hard life to save us from what we did and continue to do to ourselves. Although he was a son, he didn't have to do any of this. He learned obedience through what he suffered. I want you to think for a moment about the things, the most valuable lessons that you have learned. Did they come because God allowed you to pass through troubled waters? Did they come because there were times that you thought maybe you couldn't hold on? And because you thought maybe you couldn't hold on, you focused all the more clearly on your Savior. And you held on to that rock that doesn't move. God allows us to struggle. He allows us to suffer because that is how we grow. And being made perfect, he was made perfect. What's perfect mean? Complete. He completed it all. There was nothing left to be done. Everything that was supposed to be done was done. And being made complete, he became a source of eternal salvation to all who obey him, being designated by God a high priest after the order of Melchizedek. He is the source. Jesus told the Samaritan woman at the well, I'll give you water to drink and you'll never be thirsty again. She goes, wow, that's great. Give me some of that. John 4 is where you can find that exchange. Because he's perfect, he became the source of eternal salvation to all who obey him. And when you hear obey, think faith. Faith leads me to obey. Faith makes me want to obey. Faith is what saves. Obey is what shows. Shows that I'm saved. It shows that I'm saved. To all who obey him. And it's not always easy to obey. Nobody said it's going to be easy. Nobody said it's going to be easy. But with God's help, because we can fly to his throne of grace to find mercy and grace in time of need, we get the support, the strength that we need. Being designated by God a high priest after the order of Melchizedek. Now that order of Melchizedek, the author will, as we go forward, expound upon. So I'm not going to talk about it now, but Melchizedek was a priest. Melchizedek was a high priest, but he was a different kind of bird all together. And we will have plenty of time to study that, to learn about it. And basically, that's what the author is going to say next, but he's going to chastise them a little bit, because there are times we as believers definitely need to be chastised. What's chastise mean? That's a 50-cent word, if ever there was one. Chastise. When was the last time you used the word chastise? Chastised. It is taken to task for the sake, for our own good. Punishment's just punishment. Punishment's just straight up. You stole that, you got 10 years in the clink. It's not about anything other than you're being punished, right? That's punishment. Chastisement is hardship, being excoriated, corrected for our good. It's different than punishment. Punishment's not about our good. It's about punishment. It's what's right. It's what's just. It's what is fair. Chastisement has the aim of building us up, showing us the error of our way, and giving us the instruction that we need. Chastisement's part of discipline, giving us the instruction that we need to change our direction. About this, Melchizedek, we have much to say, and it is hard to explain, since you have become dull of hearing. Listen to this. He's really letting them have it. And remember, I'll say this and then we'll read this section. These were the Jews in the community of believers. Don't you think that in people's minds there was kind of a hierarchy? Well, these are the Jews. They've always been God's people. Now they believe in Jesus too. Their faith has been completed, and they've got a leg up on all of us because they've had this framework in which they've lived. It's been their faith. Now it's just completed. They're miles ahead. They didn't expect to hear this kind of correction, but they're going to hear it, and rightly so. About this, we have much to say, and it is hard to explain since you have become dull of hearing. For though by this time you've been in the faith for a long time, you ought to be teachers. You need someone to teach you again the basic principles of the oracles of God. You need milk, not solid food, for everyone who lives on milk is unskilled in the word of righteousness, since he is a child. But solid food is for the mature, for those who have their powers of discernment trained by constant practice to distinguish good from evil. But solid food is for the mature, for those who have their powers of discernment trained by constant practice. This calls on us. It exhorts us to get into the deep stuff. Don't let your faith, your understanding of who your God is, be an inch deep and a mile wide. No real substance. Grow, learn, dedicate yourself to that. And I'll ask, I have no idea, all of you out there who are going to be hearing this video and long after I put it out there, be hearing this video. What did you do this past week that mattered? Now, I'm not putting anybody down. I'm asking myself the same question. What did I do that really mattered? Now, there are things we have to do. You got to earn a living. You got to work. You got to do those things. And yes, they matter. You know what a good way for yourself to define what matters? Put yourself in your mind on your deathbed. At that moment, at that time, what do you think you will view as having really mattered and what didn't really matter? You know, I've used the illustration many times that no one ever was lying on their deathbed and saying, oh, I wish I would have made more money. I wish I would have traveled more. But they will say, I wish I would have spent more time with my kids. I wish I had spent more time with my God in his word so that I would have greater confidence now than I have, right? The things that matter last. The things that matter are the things that matter to God, and they get prioritized as faith, family, spouse, children, energy directed in those areas really and truly matters. But here we're talking about the faith. We're talking about the understanding of your God, and he gave you 66 books. A lot of time and effort, and it is a miracle all of its own that it has been preserved in its entirety unto this latter day. How much effort and how much time are we spending in it? Are we seeking to grow in the grace and knowledge of our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ? Or are we just grabbing a quick snack so that we can keep going? And that is the very question, put in a modern way. It is the very question that the author here is asking those Jews who had been in the faith since they were born, who didn't have to have any of this stuff about high priests or angels or Moses or prophets explained to them. Were they pursuing that which matters? Were they seeking to grow? For everyone who lives on milk is unskilled in the word of righteousness since he is a child. Milk, it's like grabbing that snack just enough to get you by. As little kids grow, they need more than milk. Their nutritional requirements change. But solid food, the real meaty stuff, where we all need to be, solid food is for the mature, for those who have their powers of discernment. Discernment. You see something and you just know. Discernment trained by constant practice. How do you get good at things? I was watching this video yesterday. I got some new earbuds and I was testing out the sound quality. And I have certain things I go listen to check out the sound quality. There is this classical guitarist from Croatia named Ana Vidovic, Vidovic. Ana, one N, Vidovic. And watching her play the guitar and listening, absolutely astounding. And there are probably many people like that. I just happened on this one a while back. Can you imagine how much time she spends practicing every day to maintain her skills, to grow, to that picture comes to mind about those who have their powers of discernment trained by constant practice to distinguish good from evil. What is Satan always trying to confuse you about? Why is our world just such a total dumpster fire? You know what the picture of a dumpster fire is? A dumpster fire, I love the image of a dumpster fire, because who knocks themselves out to put out a dumpster fire? No, you just push it away from the building, make sure it's not going to catch it on fire, and let it burn up. If the firemen get there, they get there. If they don't, that's the way our world seems. It's insane. We live in a world gone mad, and it's easy to be confused. It's easy to be carried away and have our powers of discernment dulled so that we can no longer distinguish good from evil. We need constant practice. And the only way that I am going to remain unto eternity is to be in the Word of God, which remains unto eternity. That's where we need to be. It takes work. It takes effort. That is why I do what I do. That is why out on BitChute, I have the next video I put up. When I put this video up, it's the 300th video, and probably 250 of those are Bible videos. I'm working, I'm growing, having my discernment trained by constant practice so that you can be trained, so that you've got resources to help you. And there's more than my stuff, but just time in the Word, prayerful time in the Word, asking God to enlighten you, asking Him to build you up. And it's so easy. You don't even have to carry a Bible anymore. I counted one time, I had 58 Bibles. That's going back some time. I don't even keep my Bible around anymore. I've got it on my phone. I can listen to it. And it doesn't matter about not the volume, since I just talked about listening, not volume in that sense, but it doesn't matter how much I read or how much I listen to. It's how I listen to it. It's quality, not quantity. And I'm not saying just read a verse and try to get the best out of it, but spend time in the Word. That is what the author to the Hebrews is exhorting the recipients of the letter. That's what he's exhorting them about. It matters. It matters. Spend time in the Word. We're going to continue on next time with chapter 6. There's really good stuff in chapter 6 about falling away from the faith. A lot of people worry about that. We'll get into the particulars of that. And it's going to continue as we go forward, using this picture, expanding on this idea of Jesus as a high priest after the order of Melchizedek. Thank you for watching. I pray that this ministry, this teaching, is a blessing to you. And if it is, please go down below to the thumbs up button. Hit that baby. Give us a like. It makes a difference. I also invite you, while you're down there, if you haven't yet, and why haven't you, subscribe. And when you subscribe, be sure and hit the notification bell, and then you'll be made aware every time we put out a new video. And hey, send this out, share this video with someone else. There's a button right down there. Hit that, pop it out on your social media feed, send it to a friend. And finally, drop by and pay us a visit right here at our resource center, decodingthedeception.com. If you know our name, then you know how to find us. This is Matthias 76. Together, we are decoding the deception. God bless. Have a great day.